Well, welcome, guys. This is not a formal meeting, but more of a session to just go over some of the new structured content capabilities and walk you through that and just have some dialogue about how it works and if it's a good idea, if it's not a good idea, and if it can be improved. So that's kind of the goal of today, so thanks for joining. I'll get logged in here and kind of walk you through this on this. Everybody see the screen okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So what I started seeing was, like, you know, we've got we kind of had a mad dash for the launch, I think, that happened, and a lot of different hands in the pot essentially, and doing things. Everybody has an opinion of how it needs to be done, and doesn't make any of them right or wrong. It's opinionated. So what I started seeing was, okay, well, we don't have a real consistent, you know, agreed upon methodology for certain more sensitive design areas, I guess, for the site. So one of the things that we do internally here is in using to Sexy in particular, and this same concept, by the way, can apply to open content or any other structured content solution. Today we'll be covering some of the Too Sexy stuff, but the idea is that you have some nice, powerful content types and views that can be used for multiple means, but gives you the ability to maintain that consistency across it. So, for instance, let's take a look at, we'll come back to the home page in a bit, but on every page you have a, there's a header area, and the theme actually has a blue background content pane, for instance. But one of the ways that we do things is most of our themes only have 1 or 2 or 3 content panes in it, and we just handle everything else in the structured content. So in this case, we created a banner fluid pane, which has no background color, no styling whatsoever. It's just a fluid, full width pane, fluid from a Bootstrap perspective, because we're using Bootstrap 4 here. But when we drop a Too Sexy content module into that pane, we have a header template essentially, to where if we edit that, we can change the background color of this. So these are colors that are pulled directly from, so the structured content solution goes hand in hand with the theme, but we're moving the power from having to have 500 panes, you know, for different layout options. We can move this to the structured content. So if we wanted this to be a brown background, for instance, we just change that, save, and voila, we've got a brown background to that. So that's one of the big benefits of it. And in doing that, so I've converted actually every one of these headers that were there to this approach. And that was the only area that I see, like, immediately that needed this consistency, because it's the aesthetic part. Because what I was noticing is some pages had a lot of padding on the top and a little bit of padding on the bottom, or vice versa, a lot of padding on the bottom and not much padding on the top. So one of the things that you can do with this is that in the main content area, we actually have a field for top and bottom padding to be either small, medium, or large. So I just standardized all of these to be the large padding, and then it follows the Bootstrap classes for adding the y-axis padding. So if we were to inspect this, we would see, let me pull out a mobile here. If we look in this header area,
Okay, I see.
the actual content itself has a PY-7 there. For that. So that allows us to be consistent in that. So this is more about having some tools to be able to do various layouts. Now, you know, one of the things you may say, well, what if we need a picture in there like we were on this Create Anything page? Well, that's possible. It's the exact same content type. We've called this not content type, but the view is the content block. I think it's underscore content block let's see, let's go to layout here. It's this one here, content block, content underscore block, and it uses the basic underscore content content type for that. So this is kind of a heavy toolbox one, but we'll go over kind of the editing experience of this. You've got a title here, and then you've got a rich content area. So anything that we want to do in the content, in this case, I think this is a heading 5 maybe or something like that. We can do whatever we want to in here, but I just standardized on heading 5. And then we've got presentation settings. This is what shows the actual title of it if you do want to show it on the front end. This one is just more for reference sake for the naming of the content, if you will. Mm-hmm. And then if there's an image present here, then it'll show on the right hand side, so it's nice and consistent. If we wanted to add a button to it, now this one's a bit more powerful because this is an entity in Too Sexy, and if you're familiar with that, it's really just another content type that we're pulling into this view, and we can add new buttons to this, and it becomes its own. Oops, and that is failing. Yay. The demo gods are not working well with me. There may be actually an issue there, but you can add a button to it, and it'll consistently put it in the same place there. The text alignment of this, the default is left. There's center and there's right. This is more the wrapper around the content there. So if we did want all that to be centered without having to actually literally center it inside of the rich text editor, we can control that. The real power comes into this, though. This controls the width from a bootstrap 12-column grid system, the width of the content itself. So this actually turns it into something incredibly powerful. So if we wanted a larger image, for instance, to fit half of the width of the page, we simply move this to a 612, save it, and now we have half and half. In this case, this image is not big enough to fill up the half, so that's where we're going to have a bit of a problem there. But if we had a larger image, then we can do that. Does that make sense there on how this works?
Yeah, absolutely. New to me, at least, is that you apparently nested the two admin functionalities, like two admin toolbars.
Yeah, let me show kind of where that is done there. We'd have to go into the actual view here. So let's go into the admin features, go to the view, and as you see, we already have a huge collection of views here. Some of these, I don't know who put all these in there, but some of these are just the out-of-box stuff that comes with Too Sexy. But the one that we're looking at here is content underscore block. So if we look at this, you'll see that it's using Razor. This is the Razor file for the template. Then we've got our content type, which is basic underscore content that we talked about before. But under presentation options, it's using the basic underscore content underscore options content type, and we'll go into that in just a bit. But the second thing that you're seeing there is in the list settings, we have a header item content type, and this is the basic underscore content underscore wrapper content type. So that handles the two fields for the background color and the alignment vertically on it. So if we were to go into one of those content types, we'll see, let's go over to the data. So let's look at the wrapper one first. This has two fields associated with it, BG color and column vertical alignment. And this is where we add in the classes or the values that we want from the theme. So light is what shows to the end user, but in the, light gray is what shows to the end user, but this is translating to a value of BG-light-gray in the theme, so that controls the actual color in the template. The same thing is true for the column vertical alignment. This is just using Flexbox and Bootstrap type classes here for aligning the items vertically.
Yeah.
And the other one that we talked about was the basic content underscore options. That is what is being shown in the presentation area. So most of these are straightforward, what is shown in there. The only one that's kind of special is this button one, which is an entity, and that is pointing to the button entity type that's there. And that's probably why that wasn't working, because this is not there. So let's fix that while we're in here.
Now we want to see it working, of course.
Yeah, and then let's, I guess let's take a quick look at that and make sure that it does work now. So if we wanted to add a button, yay, now it's working. Yay. So we can actually add the button. And this, again, is another content type for button that has a lot of things. Now, there's some power in this one. We think, oh, it's just a button, right? Well, we've got it to where it's, and this is probably worthy talking through, there's a label for the button. This is more just the name of it. The text that is shown in the button, so the words like save, that would be what the text is. If there is a URL placed in the link column, then that button will link to that URL. If you wanted it to open, let's say, a PDF or some file, then we can put a file in here and it'll open that file instead of the URL. So you can do it one of two ways. This just allows you to manage the documents on the site. You can control the color of the button itself, and I probably need to change this now that we've changed the primary colors to blue and brown, primary and secondary. So I probably ought to go and do that now. And then whether or not you want that link to open in a new window. And then lastly, this is the icon picker for if you wanted to put an icon associated with the button itself. You would put the Font Awesome classes in here. So I think this may be one. Here, let's just add one. Let's call this test. Let's go to, let's link it over to google.com, open a new window, color, we'll just choose red for now. So save, and oh, that was not a right class for it. And it's also, it's not really doing red, and the reason is, I'll show you this, because we changed the primary color on the theme, but then forgot to come back in and change this data type, or content type. So let's go back to the button here, and oops, wrong place. So color, let's change this. See how red is actually button primary, and that's not really red anymore, it's now blue, so let's change that. All right, so now if we come back in here and edit this, let's change the color of the button. Sorry, edit. We'll change it to brown because we're on a blue background. And what is
the icon needs to be FAS or FAB?
No, this is actually Font Awesome 4.7. The theme probably needs to be updated to Font Awesome 5 to be more current. But let's see, let's see, user I think is one.
Or home or check.
And it may just need to be FA user, I can't remember. Nope, there it is. Okay, so now we've got a button now that has the text test in it, has an icon on the left, and if you click it, it will open a new window to Google. So we have those capabilities in here. We can tweak the size of the button. It looks like it's a bit small to me on that, but I'll remove it from this one since we don't want that button. But that gives us the ability to do that. So the idea is just to try to be consistent across all of these. For those that are interested, the actual template itself on this particular one, and let me make this a bit bigger. And I'll zoom in. What's really happening here is this is where the list content, that's how you call that particular header item, content type to show up there, and the toolbar shows up. So the entire thing is container fluid, which makes it go full width. We're making sure that the margin on the bottom is 0 for it, and same thing for the container that's contained. But this wrapper here is what allows us to make sure the content is only on the 12 column and not full fluid. So it allows us to do the background color for this, and you'll see if it's not selected, then it just leaves it empty. But if it is selected, it applies to this is a tertiary statement here. And yeah, so everything else is fairly straightforward. This is looping through all the content and placing it in there. We also have an anchor field, which I didn't cover before. So if we needed to link to this from another link on the page, we can put an anchor name in there, and it'll automatically scroll the page to that piece of content, and that's injecting that in. All of this is
David,
the present. Yes, sir.
Can I ask something?
Mm-hmm.
Because here you have the container fluid. By default, if I'm correct, the NP Quick theme, if you apply the container fluid, there's a padding on the left and on the right. How did you get rid of that?
Padding on the left and right.
Yeah.
There's no padding on the left and right that I know of.
Okay. And
I'm in another screen right now. I'm going to pull up the theme. I think I have it local here. Nope, I was developing it on another machine. My apologies. I can get that here, though, if I can find out where I put it.
Well, this is really about NP Quick theme and not really about this structured content. So maybe I'll just make a recording of my local setup and explain to you what I'm encountering and see if that's an NP Quick theme thing or maybe a Tigo thing. And probably it is the last one.
Well, let's look here. I don't have a local copy on this particular machine, but this is the theme code on the right over here. If we go to default.ascx, this actually has padding set to 0 on the banner fluid pane.
Yeah.
So there is no padding on the left and right on this, but you may be thinking about the other panes, which I would propose that we get rid of these two because we don't need them anymore. Now that all the header content is in the fluid pane.
Yeah.
But that really just depends on whether or not we think this is a good approach for it or not. It is opinionated. I think every solution that we have is going to end up opinionated. So it's just a matter of not where we want to standardize on this or go a different route with it.
Well, I do think that it's a great example of the power of two-sex content, and maybe other people can leverage this as well.
Yep, that's what I was thinking as well. Which kind of brings another subject up, but maybe a bit out of scope of this call. But some of these views and implementations, it would be nice for us to kind of blog about this or video about it, and be able to share exactly what we're doing here. I mean, we'll obviously make this video available, but more things like this where we can really show others how we're leveraging open source solutions in the community to be able to do things right on the DNN community website. So that would be very nice. The other area, and by the way, just to kind of bring it back to the home page, this same approach is being used here on the home page below the banner. The banner is in the fluid pane. This blue section here is in the fluid pane. And it's the same approach that's being applied here, but this is now a blue background, and this one is the light brown type background or gray background that's in here, but it's the same approach for different kinds of content and layout. See, this one is centered, and so it looks nice for that kind of use case, and this one's more of just general content and being placed in there. But all three of these are in the same content pane with radically different look and feels. So looking at this one, this is a blue background, but the vertical alignment is center on this so that it does that. And then here is our content in the same editing experience. In this case, though, we did put the button inside of it because we wanted a full block, button block kind of thing that goes all the way full width of the area. That's the only real special. We didn't use the button field for presentation settings on this one. But we could have, you know, and just limited the width of the content and so forth if we wanted to do it that way. But it does get that power to do it. The other ones that I added was to be able to handle two different types of image-based banners, and those are different content types. And this is the example of just a static banner that's here. So just kind of starting from the template. It's fairly simple here, but it's in the banner static file, and it's simply placing a title or subtitle in there with the ability to edit it. So here now we can just come in, edit, and simply place the title that we want, the subtitle that we want, and what the image is. And the template will take care of the rest. We've got a similar concept for a slider banner that's in here, and I'll kind of show those. And we've already talked about, you know, this homepage may need to change to that to promote other community events. So, like, we just got finished with DNN Connect 2019, but DNN Summit 2020 is right around the corner, so we want to promote that and help people know about that. So that's a good use case for switching this over to a slider banner that looks and feels the same way, but yet it rotates through here. If I go into the administration, we've got a banner content type that feeds both of those views. And that simply has three fields like you saw, image title, image, and image subtitle. And then in the views, we've got a banner static, which is the one that you see in place right now on the home page. And then we have a banner slider, and that one's a different view, but it has a bit more capabilities in it. It supports a list of banners on there, but it works the same type way. So I think we probably ought to convert this one over to that and make sure it looks good. But notice that this actually has a nice overlay on the image behind it. So if you can see from here up, it's got a slight light brown hue to it if we were to inspect that. And that is handled in the template, by the way, by this BG Banner Transparent class. And that is controlling that background color there. So that allows us to use images that might have a lighter background to it. Putting text on images is always tricky, and one of the tricks is to put a nice overlay color kind of behind it or underlay on that. So I mean, we only have 3 of us here, but I mean, does this look like a decent approach for at least the header areas of all the pages on the site?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good deal. Well, I'm sure there's a way to improve some of this. So as you play around with it and utilize it, feel free to tweak as you see fit. You have the lay of the land. But if there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and stop the recording here, and we'll try to share this out.
I'm curious to, because right now you created new content types within the standard content app, correct?
That's correct.
So,
should we shift it to an app is probably the question, is that?
Yeah, I think so, because right now the only solution, I think, is to export this entire content app and import it, but then you would import it instead of the default install. And I
so that's actually a good point.
Yeah.
That's one way we could make this available to people as well, easier by doing an app for it. So for those that are not familiar with what Ticho is presenting here, is there's two basic modules with 2Sexy. There's a content module and there's an app module. Their content is in of itself really kind of an app, but all of these, and I'll pull up the administration, all of these content types and data and views is all within the context of the content app, if you will. But what we can do is we can actually go in to the Manage Apps area, and we can create an app, and you'll see we already have an app for some of the different areas on the site. One example is I did that for the MVPs section here, but we could do the same thing for, we should call it maybe banners or something like that. And what that does is it allows us to isolate the content types, data, and views into a single app that can then be exported and imported. Easier to make it more easy to implement on sites, and we can actually open source that that app if we wanted to. So that's a great idea. Maybe we should do that.
And well, maybe a little bit in the same line of thoughts. I'm guessing the classes you use right now are in the DNN community theme itself. I can imagine that is the right approach, or is it also feasible to incorporate it in the app?
So it's a great question. It's more of a philosophical and an opinionated question. We lean more to the side of letting the theme control as much as it can possibly control, and then just utilize the things from the theme in the app and or content for the structured content stuff. We've seen others do it other way. We used to do it other way. We've shifted this just mainly because we can go to one place in the theme and we can change it without having to go back and update the structured content. Now, we saw an example earlier where that did not go true because we changed something fundamental. We changed the primary color, and we had labeled it a certain color, in the data there. So
the reason I'm saying it is because of portability. If you would export the banner, and it will refer to the banner transparent class, then you either need to use this theme or be aware of the CSS or SAS files that is used, and then we would need documentation.
That's absolutely correct. I think either approach that you take, there's pros and cons to that approach, and you probably run into those. If you completely isolate it, the styling inside of the structured content solution, then you also take some performance hits because of that as well. If it's a style here and there, not as big of a deal. But for instance, what you run into is, like, let's say you take some of the apps that are in the 2Sexy app database, right? And you pull some of those out. They may be using standard Bootstrap stuff for the most part, but every once in a while there's something opinionated in it that overrides something or uses importance. So you end up, kind of taking a performance hit when it gets moved there. So that's another reason why we try to move all that to the theme as much as possible, so that way you can get the performance aspect of it and everything gets minified in that context through part of the build process.
All right.
Okay. So I guess that's a good good action item to take away from this. Sounds like we're on the same page that this is a good idea to standardize the look and feel across the site and utilize these. I mean, these content blocks can be used in normal content too. They're not just banner specific. It's just that it allows you to handle the background colors and things like that for those specific uses like that as well. So feel free to use those since those are there. But it sounds like good action item is to move those over into its own isolated app.
All right. Brilliant.
All right. Well, thanks for the time. I'll go ahead and stop the recording for this.